student search. So this can be really useful if, let's say, you're a head of department having a conversation with another head of department, and maybe you're discussing individual students. You can come in here and just search directly for them. So I might look up Aisha butternut squash, and we can look at all of Aisha's data across all of her subjects. You can look at her scores. You can also look at where she's doing revision if we use these filters again. So that's a really useful tool as well. So I mentioned you can drill into these headings, and that is really the main way of navigating this. So you can, again, use this to kind of set the controls for what you're doing, but then you can dive into a year group. So we could go into year 10. You see all of the classes in year 10. So I can dive into one of those particular classes, or I can look at all of the students in year 10 at once. And then likewise, up at the top, I can dive into a subject. So I can go into science, let's say GCSE science, because we're looking at year 10. I'm going to go into a specific subject, so I'll go into biology. And then here you have a breakdown of the biology curriculum. One thing I'll point out here is you'll see these gray numbers. What that means is that this student, or here, year 10, they have answered some questions, but it's not quite enough for us to feel confident about, saying Sergio's got 100%. That could just be one single question that he's answered. So what you can do is switch over to questions answered just to double check that. And you can see Sergio has just answered 2 questions here. If they haven't answered any questions, you'll have a blank. That's basically what that means. I think we can go even further. We can actually drill further into infection and response and see quite a detailed level of breakdown. So anything that you can set a quiz on, you can see here in the Data Explorer. What I like to recommend is once you've got down to the zoom level that you want to work in, I like to use these sort buttons at the top. And what that does is it just sort of groups it by color. So it's a little bit easier to see color changes that have, well, colors that are different from their neighbors. So you can scroll down and some will jump out at you. It just makes it a little bit easier to look at. Okay. What are we talking about next? Right. One of the best parts, I think, about this tool is that you can click on any of these scores and you can actually open up a report, which is sort of a cross section of all of those different types of information. So I've clicked on year 10 with infection and response, and it has loads of information. So there's a top section about the performance of year 10 and how it compares to the national average. So here we've got a visual with year 10 score and the national average, and then a bar here. We call these the rainbow sausages, which I don't think is going to make it into the marketing, but that's the rainbow sausage. And that's basically the expected score for year 10s based on how they do in other things. There's also a section on how many questions year 10 has answered with a little visual that breaks down how many of those were homework and how many of those were revision. And then you've got a section which is further breaking down the curriculum. So these are all the topics in infection and response. We have both score spread and average score.